Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with a book review, something that I don't normally do. I find that oftentimes I can do my weekly wrap up, and I can talk about a book in that context, and it's usually sufficient for the books that I read. But sometimes there's a book that just has extra that you want to talk about, that gives you a little more, stumps you in a way that you want to reflect a little bit, and offers an opportunity for a different level of insight and a different level of discourse. And I found that to be true with the 10th book of Anita Brookner. This is Brief Lives, with its gorgeous cover. Now, this is the Penguin UK edition. I bought this from Blackwell's, and they ship to the United States if you're in the US. They did a whole series of Anita Brookner. It's not the full series, but it's many of them with this black and white cover. I'm doing a project. If you are new to my channel, you may not know. I'm reading all of Anita Brookner's work in publication order with my friend Leo of A Little Book Life. And so we have read 10 up to this point, and I talk about them as I complete them. Her works are usually really short, really to the point. She's a very focused writer. She's someone who doesn't write a lot of plot. This is deep character study, also known as psychological fiction. Very literary fiction, very smart. Her awareness and her ability to see people and to write about them is sharp, is astute, biting and acerbic sometimes, can be hysterically funny or incredibly poignant. What she does is unique and to me incredibly interesting. Now, and I say all that, but I also acknowledge that she writes about the same type of woman over and over and over again. Fundamentally, there are some times where that's not been the case, but I would say most of the books that we've read so far have been about middle class white women in London or thereabouts. So there's not diversity here of any kind. It's literally the same type of woman repeated and repeated, or the same themes, the themes of family, of loneliness, of ending up in a life that you don't recognize in old age. These are themes that she revisits over and over and over again. What I find interesting about her work, and it's almost always the same, is that it's hard to distinguish what time period we're in when we read her books. So there's this timelessness that feels old-fashioned. It feels definitely not contemporary, definitely sometimes not even modern. It feels dated, it feels antique, and most of that comes from the attitude, and also the fact that the books lack place markers to give you a historical context and to set you in the right place. So there's this, the setting is London, but we don't really know what time it is. And so sometimes that can be a little confusing. But what she brings into sharp focus are these characters and these themes. So let's talk a little bit about this book specifically. This book centers Faye. Faye is a middle-aged woman, and she is reflecting on her life when she looks at the paper in the morning. And the very first line of the book reads, the first two lines read, "Julia died. I read it in the Times this morning." I find that her first sentences or her first paragraphs are always stunners. The woman knows how to craft a sentence, knows how to craft a paragraph, knows how to pull these insights into text in a way that's incredibly compelling. Leo and I spend so much time going over specific sentences that stood out to us, that just were amazingly beautiful or very poignant or hysterically funny. So we meet Faye. We also meet Julia. Now, Julia is her frenemy. Julia is somebody that she has had to become friends with because their husbands worked together. Specifically, her husband worked for Julia's husband. And so it was important for them to establish good rapport and have a relationship. Because of that importance, they even went away on holidays together and spent a lot of time together. Another sentence that explains, though, the dynamic of their friendship. She was not a very nice woman, but then neither am I. Quite a sentence right there. I'm going to read a few sentences and a few little passages that explain who Julia is, that give you a sense of her character, but also give you a sense of the brilliance of Anita Brookner's writing style. But don't worry, I will not give any spoilers. This is Julia coming into their home for a dinner party that they're hosting. I should say that Julia used to be an actress on the stage, and she has had to give that up, and I'll leave it there. For her first entrance into our drawing room that evening, in ravishing black silk with a black silk turban, it was evident that she had thrown herself body and soul into the character of a simple suburban wife. "My darling," she announced, sweeping the black chiffon handkerchief from her bag and draping it round her neck. "I want you to treat me as one of yourselves. Forget about Julia. Julia is no more. Let the people have what they want. If they want ruffians, there are plenty to go around. My day is done." She put her hand to her throat, and I swear there were tears in her eyes. She is quite the dramatic type of character that needs attention, needs focus, just wants herself to be the center of attention. Here's another sentence about their relationship. "She was shrewd, clever, able to penetrate one's unspoken thoughts. She knew instinctively that I was anxious to be free, and I think she determined then that she would never let me go. Although she found me uninteresting, I would do as an adherent, or, if I did not conform, as an adversary. She would get her discussion at last. I resolved once again to disappear." So you get a little sense of what their relationship was like, and the power dynamics, and the sense of who Faye thinks she is in relationship to Julia. But it would be too simplistic to say that what Anita has done in this book is to do a compare contrast. She's not doing that at all. She plays with power dynamics throughout the entire book, which makes it so compelling and so interesting. I want to give another character so you get to see that she doesn't only reserve her intelligent wit and sharp barbs for the protagonist and antagonist of the books. There's also more interesting conversations about other people as well. So this is about her own mother-in-law. "I remember being dazzled by the many cut glass mirrors and decanters in her tiny, overfurnished sitting room, but not too dazzled to notice a fine bloom of dust. Vinnie herself had something of the same glitter and dustiness. She was a small, very thin woman with a blatantly made-up face. Lustreless, dark curls were confined under one of those little spotted veils which were so fashionable in the 50s, and lipstick seeped from her pursed mouth into the deep, bitterly indented lines at the corners. The eyes were fine, dark, and haunted, set in a landscape of blue shadow and ornamented by quill-like lashes. She was wearing a pink tweed suit which looked as if it had been made for a child. Even so, it seemed too big for her, but the effect was deliberate, for it showed off her slim and astoundingly girlish legs, of which she was obviously proud, for she habitually crossed and uncrossed them, and made as if to pull down the skirt with a freckled hand loaded with rings. there's a lot. The book is filled with those types of observations of other people, and more people make up the environment and the community that she's more that Julia has gained around her. One of the things that she talks a lot about is loneliness. So much so that that's what people expect from Anita Brookner's books. And I wanted to talk a little bit about loneliness in specific ways, because I think it feels to me as if she has been dancing around the subject of loneliness for so long, and finally made a little bit of headway here. So when she talks about loneliness, this is some of the examples that she'll use. Silence was to be my burden, my portion. I did not expect anyone to care what happened to me in the future. It occurred to me that I was free as I'd never wanted to be free. I experienced this freedom as a sort of shame. If I was to be free, it was because nobody needed me, because there had been a failure of sorts. This is something that Leo and I, poor Leo has to hear me kvetch about this every single time I see it. She obsesses over time and the passage of time. She does it in every single book she has, no matter what character, if it's a male character or female character. There's always one that complains about the passing of hours and how it will be filled. On this page, it says, I became nervous now in the evening, particularly when rain threatened, as it did frequently after the hectically bright days of late April. Standing at my window, I would nervously count the hours that remained before I could go to bed. I have seen that sentence in every single Anita Brookner that so far for the past 10 books. And it always bothered me. It's something that to me speaks to a lack of self-interest in the narrator, that they are in anticipation of life as opposed to living life. They are waiting. They are wanting somebody else to fill it. And I could never understand what that was. And then she starts to get closer in this book. Here's an example of what I mean. Silence was to be my burden, my portion. I did not expect anyone to care what happened to me in the future. It occurred to me that I was free as I'd never wanted to be free. I experienced this freedom as a sort of shame. If I was free, it was because nobody needed me, because there had been a failure of some sort. So the idea that it's not that she doesn't know how to fill the hours or that she's intellectually incurious and unable to think of something to do. It's that there's the shame of not having someone. What does it mean to be a spinster or to be a widow or to be someone who never had children? A little earlier, she said, when the light goes and the curtains are drawn, it's only natural to turn to one's companion. And if that companion is no longer there, one feels his absence most cruelly. So we're starting, it feels like Anita has been writing 10 novels as a form of self-therapy, talk therapy, writing therapy, to get to a point where she's having a few breakthroughs here, which felt very exciting. And I don't know if someone only reading this book without reading the other ones would recognize how profound that felt. When I started to think so much about this and so much about this idea of loneliness and the shame of it, I started thinking about her relationship to feminism. And all over the place, she would say things like this. Looking back, I see that all women are programmed in this way and are hardly aware of it. I was aware of it only because I never intended to be anything but married. I had not known then that it was not necessary to marry every man one loves. I know it now. Now I realize that it is marriage which is the great temptation for a woman, and that one can and perhaps should resist it. I should have resisted it, or rather I should have resisted it then and given it a chance to come along later. But as a young woman, one loses her heart so easily, and then one wants all the appurtenances, I had never seen that word before in my life, of marriage, the excitement and the security and the promise of a new life. And it is so sad to go without. I think differently now, but old women have more courage than young ones. They have no choice but to be brave. And then here's another one. Life had taught me to seek protection, however nugatory. I was, after all, a woman of my time, of my age. I was not strong enough, certainly not grand enough, to do as I pleased. Doing as I pleased had come to mean supplying myself with simple comforts, warmth, sleep, and a certain amount of adornment. Heroines are not made of women like myself. And that's when it dawned on me that it's not loneliness that she's talking about, what she's talking about and trying to investigate, but I don't think she realizes it. It's that her characters do not own self-worth. Her characters do not imbibe the sense that they have a right to enjoy their time alone. They have a right to live the life that they want to live. They have the right to do certain things, and including not marrying, including being alone. But she is stuck in this in-between state where feminism is starting. She sees it happening. She sees women. She actually knows the term. She even benefits from being able to work before she got married. But she cannot see herself as an independent woman who is out to be curious about her own intelligence and curious about the world around her, that she has a part in it, because the part that she's expected to play is that of wife and mother. She makes me, it is crazy making to read all of her slams on feminism, or all of the ways that her characters are passive, the inability that they have to just self-soothe or comfort themselves, and how they're just frozen in time. But at the same time, it's her sentences, it's her astute observations, and is also watching her slowly unpack and process this as we go. I do so hope that as we continue in this project, she has 24 books in total, that she starts to unpack this idea as we go on. I would love her to find a fully realized independent woman near the end of her life. But until that time, this book stands in my pantheon of complex, difficult women characters, specifically because of the relationship and power dynamic between Julia and Faye. And so let me give you a quick brief on those, because I think they're important. The one is the Elena Ferrante series. I do not own them because those covers I just don't like them, but I will have to just suck it up and get them one day. But those are all in the pantheon. We also have The Door by Magda Szabo, phenomenal book about power dynamics between two very headstrong women. We have An Unnecessary Woman by Rabi Ahmadine. And this book is remarkable, about a woman on her own who is self-actualized and realized and doesn't need anybody. So I think Anita Brookner could learn a little bit from the main character here. And we have Muriel Berbery's The Elegance of the Hedgehog. And this is translated by Allison Anderson, also about a very interesting and difficult woman. So there we go. I hope that if you have not given Anita Brookner a chance, that you will try at least one of her works. And I hope I gave you enough to tantalize your palate for her work. That's it for me for now. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you later.